The shield of the hoplite was a big shield, about 1 meter wide, but it covered only half the body, and therefore the protection comes from the overlapping of each shield with the man next to him.
From the mountains high above Marathon, Miltiades and his 10 generals had a clear view of the Persian army arrayed beneath them. This was an army over twice their number, with archers from Ethiopia, swordsmen from the banks of the Indus, and wild horsemen from the steppes of Asia. Although all these men were the subjects of King Darius of Persia, they had little in common with one another. Not even a common language. The Greeks, on the other hand, were neighbors, standing shoulder to shoulder and brother to brother, fighting to save their independence and way of life. Memories of the tyrant Hippias were fresh in their minds, and death was preferable to him regaining the Athenian crown. But neither side seemed eager for a fight. For 4 days, the two armies faced each other in a nervous standoff.
One reason why the Greeks waited is simply that they were in a very strong position there. They could not, as such, be forced. And the Persians, being so much larger, had a supply problem, and therefore it was quite likely that supplies would run low and that they might even consider retiring.
Datis was holding back in hope that the Athenians, still loyal to Hippias, might rise up and seize control of Athens. On the Greek side, Miltiades waited, perhaps in the hope that his forces might be bolstered by the promised Spartan contingent. Neither side would make a move. But in the Persian camp, Datis was hatching a daring battle plan that would break the deadlock. Soon the killing and fighting would begin. Battle of Marathon. September 490 BC, on the plain of Marathon in Greece, a mighty Persian invasion force was waiting to go into battle against a small Greek army intent on saving their country, their freedom, and their way of life. After 4 days of stalemate, the Persian commander Datis decided to gamble everything on a quick victory. Under cover of darkness, he loaded all of his cavalry and some of his infantry back onto his ships. While the Athenian army was at Marathon, he would sail round the coast, land his troops, and attack the unprotected city of Athens. His faithful commander, Artaphernes, would stay at Marathon with a holding force of around 12,000 men. If Datis thought he could load thousands of horses and men onto his ships and sail quietly away into the night, he was very much mistaken. Miltiades' scouts uncovered the ruse.
The Greeks consequently realized here is a danger and an opportunity. The danger is if we don't act now, the city will be captured behind our backs. The opportunity is we can march down into the plain now and take them on because they won't have time to unship their cavalry again.
Miltiades had to move quickly. It would take Datis more than 10 hours to sail to Athens and several more hours to unload his army. Miltiades had to win a quick victory at Marathon and then march at full speed back to Athens to confront Datis.
What they did was seize what the Greeks called kairos. They had a word meaning opportunity, the opportune moment. And I think the genius of Miltiades is indeed largely responsible for their choosing the right moment.
Miltiades marshaled his 11,000 hoplites and readied them for battle. Greeks would normally have formed a rectangular phalanx, but he was worried by the length of the enemy battle line. The Persians could sweep around both sides and envelop the Greek army. We know this kind of detail because of two Greek historians. Herodotus, who wrote in the years after the battle and may even have met some survivors, and Plutarch, who wrote 400 years later but used material from earlier histories. Miltiades took a huge risk and tore up the battle manual. he abandoned the traditional phalanx formation and deployed his troops along the widest possible front, so that the center of the line was much thinner than usual, 4 men deep as opposed to the customary 8. But on each wing, he retained the 8 ranks of the conventional phalanx. He wanted to protect his flanks.
The Greek heavily armored infantry, they had a 3-foot shield that would cover them from brow to knee, greaves down here on the shin guards, and then a helmet with just eye slits, so that when they put that helmet at the rim of the shield, they really were pretty much invulnerable.
As the Greek army rolled forward, Miltiades was already thinking of the next problem. The massed ranks of Persian archers, deadly at up to 300 yards. The Greeks would have to cover that final distance at speed, or risk being slaughtered.
They marched forward at a sedate pace, the usual sedate pace of a hoplite army advancing, until they came within bowshot, which is maybe 100 yards or so.
Once within bowshot, the Greeks came under a hail of arrows. Miltiades' troops broke into a run. This astonished the Persians. The phalanx, by its very nature, usually went into battle at a slow, steady pace.
The Persian archers would have posed a very serious threat to the hoplite force. They had very powerful bows and large arrows that could have done serious damage.
Imagine yourself in full armor, with a heavy shield, spear and sword, a total weight of 70 pounds, having to race to the enemy and be able to put up a strong fight when you reached him.
There was a British historian who actually built himself a suit of hoplite armor and went to Marathon and ran from approximately the place where the Athenian camp was to the site of the battle, and showed that a fit man could actually run that distance in armor.
The hoplites trained hard for this. There was even a hoplite event in the Olympic Games of the period, which involved sprinting over 400 yards in full kit and armor. The